All right, everyone. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with a live call-in show on this fine Thursday night. A bright, sunny day and a week here in Connecticut, but giving way to clouds and some thunderstorms outside. Hope everything is going well for you and you're getting ready for your big weekend. We only have about 6 more of these left until we will have college football and be talking college football and watching college football Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and that opening weekend on into Sunday and Monday with some huge matchups, of course. If you've only seen me once or twice, or maybe never seen this channel at all, you have arrived. You have found the place for the best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football that you will find anywhere online. Yes, there are some other tremendous hosts and analysts out there. I will not take anything away from them. I enjoy a number of other YouTubers who do a fine job, and of course, other writers and broadcasters that do a great job online and on radio and TV. We deliver content like nobody else here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football and the game that you love for the hardcore, serious college football fan. And that doesn't mean we're always serious. That means we're serious college football fans, but I don't want us to always be serious. So lock it in right here. And again, if you have yet to dive into the videos, please do. We've got over 8,000 right now. I'm going to be taking phone calls, and the number is 860-325-3687. I will put that phone number in the live stream, 860-325-3687. Come in and join what we consider to be the best live chat in college football as well. That's what some of our core members of our team, of our community here, have mentioned to me and proclaimed it the best live chat room in college football. All right. I want to remind you that you can help us build the channel by grabbing the Amazon link in the description section below. Go to the description section of any video, grab the Amazon link, and do your regular Amazon shopping right there. You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to buy the product that you see. It doesn't cost you an extra penny, but by doing so, you get the same shopping experience and you help us build the channel. Also, you can join the Voice of College Football community. The link to that is below. The Voice of College Football community, where I deliver 2 exclusive live streams each and every week. Get this. One live stream, I respond to your viewer comments. I react to your viewer comments here on YouTube for the very first time. And the other exclusive live stream, I bring you on to talk college football with me. So we've done that with 2 of our Voice of College Football community team, and would like to do it each and every week. So what I envision is we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, and we bring 3 or 4 of you on at a time, and you jump on for 10 or 15 minutes. We talk college football directly. I'm talking about what you see with my guests. Bring you on to talk college football. And how much better can it get than that? And then we've got another announcement coming up in the next few weeks concerning our Voice of College Football community. The Super Chat, it's on. So there are many ways in which you can help us build the channel and support us and sustain us and help us to grow. We're a team. We need each other to help this thing go as far as it possibly can. And one way is the Super Chat. The Super Chat is on. Also, like the videos, comment, subscribe, and share the videos out on social media. And especially concerning our Wednesday night 3-hour block of live streaming at 7 o'clock Eastern time with Florida State, 8 o'clock with Miami, and at 9 o'clock with Ohio State. Let people know that we're here each and every Wednesday night talking college football. I have had a number of people ask me about a schedule for call-in shows. They've either said, Mark, when's the next call-in show? Or they've said, Mark, what's your call-in show schedule? Last football season, I dedicated myself to a specific schedule, and I lined up with that schedule. I adhered to that schedule. I met it each and every week, and we were consistently delivering call-in shows Sunday morning, Also on, I believe it was Monday night, maybe Thursday night, and then, of course, all day Saturday, Friday during the games, Saturday during the games, and so forth with live analysis. And for those of you who have yet to live and breathe and watch a college football season with us here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, you're in for a treat. Saturdays are binge watching, live streaming, and call-in shows, and that's what we'll do each and every Saturday coming up this fall. 860-325-3687. I wanted to address the ESPN Football Power Index. We touched upon it concerning Miami specifically in our live stream tonight with Cam Underwood from State at the U at 8 o'clock Eastern Time or 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Anyway, it's posted. It's there for you, so you can watch it if you missed us. But we featured Miami and Cam's outrage at Miami's ranking at 27 and projected 8-4 record. I'm going to look a little bit deeper from a national perspective on the top 25 and beyond, the entire Football Power Index as announced by ESPN for 2019 and their win projections. Also, I wanted to look at some quarterback battles and just basically run down the quarterback battles that are still ensuing, the quarterback battles that are still up in the air and to be waged in August, where there is not a clear front runner and it's not been clearly decided. TCU comes to mind in particular with 4 or 5 quarterbacks in play at TCU. And if they can get that answered, if they can find the right guy and get good, decent, strong quarterback play, consistent quarterback play with some big plays and lack of mistakes at TCU, they would be my dark horse to win the Big 12. If anyone outside of Oklahoma or Texas is going to win the Big 12, I got to think it's got to be TCU. I know there's some love out there for Iowa State as well as possibly the best defense in the conference. They have been arguably with Texas for the past few seasons, and TCU's been right up there as well. Conference media days. Conference media days start on Monday with the SEC, and the other ones fall in line throughout the week. All the Power 5 conferences, excluding the Pac-12, which hits the podium the next weekend from Hollywood. And so we will be all over the various conference media days starting on Monday. So look out for that. We've got a number of contributors, of course, that you see on a regular basis that will be attending those media days at the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC. The ACC kickoff, as they like to call it. And we will get the lowdown from all of those venues here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. 860-325-3687. I'm going to check out the live chat, and we're going to run down the ESPN Football Power Index, and I'll see what you guys have to say as well. All right. Who's in the chat room? Got Auburn Lige, Lige, Auburn season going to be. ESPN believes that Auburn's the 9th best team in the country. Now, combine that with the brutal schedule, and they're not necessarily projecting that Auburn's going to finish 9th in the country, but they believe that Auburn is the 9th best team in the country. Underscore Deportes on the line. Underscore Deportes. I have never seen your handle in any of the comments or in the live chat before, and you jumped right in, right out of the gate. So I got to say, underscore Deportes, welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And I had to watch the crane, the arm right here. I couldn't really wind it up and give you the full delivery there, so I'm going to have to work on that. I'll go to the left hand. I'll become a lefty on those big celebratory welcomes. So underscore Deportes, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Would love to know who you root for, how long you've been watching. The one Duke Nukem pulling for the Gators. Thomas Milton on the line. We got Comic Dude 45 underscore Deportes. Again, good to see you. Hey, Mark. Quentin Lee, 288028. Good to see you out there. Boomer Sooner. Got Quentin Lee. Yes. We also have some Florida State folks. I lost track. Florida State with Raz AFSU. Weston on the line. TCU should be solid this season. Mark putting that work in tonight. Of course I am. I've got so much else. I strike up these live streams because this is what I like to do. This is why I'm doing this, is to talk to you guys in the live chat and on the phone. This is what makes this right here. This is the magic. This is why I've got a YouTube channel. I have so much to do that I need to do to build this out. Equipment, marketing, sales. You can't imagine the to-do list. And I could be doing all those things. I still need to post videos that will be released for tomorrow. So I've got to edit 3 or 4 videos for the main channel, plus the USC, Ohio State, Miami channels. I still have to do all that tonight, overnight. But I thought, I got to do a call-in show. MCD Sports 4, good to see you, as always. 904 Hurricane. Yep, putting in the work. Got to put in the work. Got to grind it out. Anybody else on the line? Not too many people staying up with us tonight. We only have 15 on the line right now, 16 on the line. All right, you guys get Bam at home this year. Are you taking them down? Talking about Joey Gatewood and Auburn. All right, let's get to the ESPN Power Index. And let's see where they may have missed it. Okay. Let's distinguish two things here. Again, this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football for the smart fan. So we've got to understand that there are rankings that basically take into account the schedule. There are people who rank the teams because they are trying to make a prediction about the final rankings at the end of the season. And so when you pick up Phil Steele's top 25 rankings or his complete rankings, Athlon, Street and Smith's, all these magazines, I got to think that when they're giving you the final rankings, they are determining based on the quality of the teams plus the schedule. So they're making predictions about the final rankings. They are not telling you these are the 25 best teams in the country. If I get really ambitious, I'm going to try to do both. So if you understand me here, I will deliver a top 25. I hope to deliver a top 25. I don't want to make any outlandish promises about what I'm going to do because I've done that in the before. And if I don't get the response and don't get the support on that particular video series, and then I just let it go because I'm not going to work for 20 hours on a video series if a handful of people are going to watch it. So sometimes guys don't get excited about the same video series that I do. So for example, I thought it would be very interesting to go through the entire season and go through every week and take a vote and have all of you vote on every game. We keep the standings and basically you determine based on your vote, the standings of the college football season. We see who wins the conferences, what the standings are in each conference. Then we would serve as the college football playoff selection committee, select the 4 playoff teams, and play out the entire season. I did that for about 3 weeks, and nobody seemed to be too interested. The initial video where I explained what we were going to do seemed to get a lot of people excited, and then it kind of drifted off from there. So I understand. But I'm not going to go through all that if nobody's going to watch certain video series. So let's understand two things. So I may release 2 separate top 25s. One would be, these are the top 25 teams in the country. These are the 25 teams that I believe to be best, second best, third best, fourth best, fifth best, on down the line, regardless of their schedule. Their schedule has nothing to do with it. It's who has the best team, the second best team, the third best team, the fourth best team. And maybe the fifth best team, let's say, in the country plays a brutal schedule. So I may believe that that particular team is the fifth best team in the country, but they are not going to post the fifth best record in the country or fifth best performance in the country to be ranked that high because they may go 8-4. So they're not going to get ranked fifth in the country, regardless of how impressive their 8-4 is and how close their games are against the great teams. Their 8-4 is not going to rank them fifth in the country. Therefore, they may finish 18th in the country. So if I have time, feel ambitious, and if you folks seem to be enthusiastic about it, I may have 2 top 25s. Then, of course, for those of you who go back to at least last season, each and every Sunday, I release my top 25 that actually makes sense. It's the top 25 that actually makes sense. And you'll find out what that means if you haven't seen it before. We tend to post top 25s covering college football based on brand recognition and perception and believing that what we see on the field isn't necessarily that particular team's value, and we're waiting to see that they're actually better or not as good as what we've seen, so we tend to rank them with a strong bias, or we're predicting for the future. Oh, this team's 5-0, but they've got Auburn, Alabama, and Texas A&M 3 consecutive weeks in November, so they're not going to be number 5 here soon. So why rank them number 5 right now? They're not that good. They're not going to be that good. They're not going to stay at number 5. Well, why don't we keep them at number 5? If they've earned the number 5 ranking, we'll knock them down when they show us that they should be knocked down the pole. All right, one more look at the live chat with you guys. I should have grabbed my glasses. Yeah. All right. There we go. NCIS Fanatic 21, Oregon overrated. 904 Hurricane. Hey, Mark, I think this is the first time I haven't seen George in the chat. George maybe found something different to do. Maybe George is reading a book. George is possibly reading his Bible tonight. Maybe George has a room to paint at home. Maybe he's watching Florida Gators games from 1996 when they won the national championship. All right, we got our first call of the night. Ooh, I got this with my new mic here, so we've got a little bit different of an angle to deal with. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, this is Anthony.
Anthony, how are you?
Fine. Hey, Mark, I have a question. Why is it that when I look at the rankings, like the top 25,
Yeah,
they don't have the Hurricanes ranked, and there's teams that are above them that don't have the same amount of talent as the Hurricanes, but yet they're ranked above the Hurricanes. Why is that?
so which rankings are you referring to? All of them?
Yeah, like in general, like overall.
The only rankings I've looked at, really, even though I've got I've got one of the preview magazines hanging out right here. Let's see where they've got Miami. We did talk. I don't know if you saw our live stream earlier tonight with Cam Underwood, but we were talking about.
No, I wasn't able to see it.
We were talking about Miami being ranked at 27th in the ESPN Football Power Index. So that's to your point right there. I know that at least the ESPN FPI tends to take a change at quarterback and a change at the head coaching position very seriously and tend to knock teams down based on those two factors. They've studied it for a long time, and they believe that when a team loses a head coach and starts a new head coach, they tend to take a step back, and also with a new quarterback in play as well.
No, the perfect example is UCF lost Mackenzie Milton for the rest of the season. Yet I was watching. I saw the rankings on ESPN, and they're like ranked in like 24 or 25, even with Mackenzie Milton. Now, apparently, with his serious injury and stuff like that, that's what I don't understand about the UCF being ranked before us when they lost Mackenzie Milton last season with a serious injury.
Athlon has Miami at number 28.
Okay, yeah. And I think 24/7 has them at 26 and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. Overall, the rankings are overlooking the Hurricanes, yet UCF lost their quarterback for the rest of the year to an ACL injury, and they don't know if he's going to be able to play football.
They lost their quarterback for the rest of the year, but you understand, Anthony, that their backup quarterbacks, whether they go with Brandon Wimbush or Daryl Mack, both have more experience than N'Kosi Perry. And they've both played better than N'Kosi Perry. So their backup quarterbacks have experience, of course.
Wait, Brandon Wimbush played better than...
Not specifically last year, did he? I believe he threw 4 touchdowns and 6 picks. But over the course of his career, Brandon Wimbush has been better than N'Kosi Perry. Now, listen to what I have to say here. I'm not saying that Brandon Wimbush is better than N'Kosi Perry. I'm saying that Brandon Wimbush has played his career, Pardon me? He's performed better than N'Kosi Perry thus far in his career.
Okay, yeah. You're saying he's more consistent.
He has been till now. I don't know that I would take him over N'Kosi Perry. I believe Perry's going to be a better quarterback because I've not been impressed with Brandon Wimbush, but he has been a starter for over a year and a half at Notre Dame, and he had a really good 2017 season when they went 10-3. Now, last year he lost his job after 4 games and did not play well. He threw 6 interceptions, and he only completes about 50% of his passes. But he's more of a running threat than N'Kosi Perry.
Do you think Wimbush is more like, do you think his skill set fits more better in that offense that UCF played than he was at Notre Dame?
Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do, because he is not the passer that Mackenzie Milton is, but he's certainly a running threat like Mackenzie Milton. And Mackenzie Milton's freshman season at UCF was not a prolific season passing the football. He has developed into a great quarterback as a passer. And Brandon Wimbush, though, I think the clock is ticking on him showing us that he can be a refined passer because he's been pretty awful as a passer. He can hit the deep throw. He's got a strong enough arm. He's just inconsistent. I don't want to make a determination on that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know his specific situation. Of course, we're all pulling for him. I interviewed him at American Conference Media Days last summer, and he seems like a great guy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pulling for him, but realistically, with a quarterback, the way he plays with an ACL injury, I don't think he's going to be the same, because I can't remember, didn't a pro quarterback or someone have a running quarter the same style as him that had an ACL injury? He didn't come back the same or something like that.
An ACL. Was RG3 an ACL? I don't remember if RG3 was an ACL. He was never the same.
Or a serious knee injury is what I'm saying.
Sure.
There was a quarterback that...
Well, there's all sorts of quarterbacks that have hurt their knees.
Yeah, and honestly, what's your do you think these rankings are overlooking the Hurricanes? or do you think they're ranked in the right space?
I think that Miami has a more talented roster than number 27 or 28 in the country. But I don't think it's a huge slap in the face that they're being ranked 27th or 28th in the country. They're coming off a season in which they won 7 games, and I understand they had a coaching change, and people in Miami are very hyped up about Manny Diaz, but people that root for the Canes need to understand that they see things from a skewed perspective, just like everybody else does concerning their own team. So they're very excited that they're getting a particular coach off the sideline, Mark Richt, and they're getting a particular quarterback, Malik Rozier, off the field. And the new quarterback situation should be better. They should be improved, if not drastically, decidedly, substantially at quarterback. The head coaching position, I think Mark Richt takes a bit of a shot. Now it should be a better situation under Manny Diaz. He's got a fire under him. He's ready to go, but he's going to make some mistakes as a head coach. And so my thought about Miami football and where Miami's ranked by these various services right now in the low 20s is that, yes, I believe that that's undervaluing Miami a bit, but I don't think it's drastic.
The reason why I asked that is because I remember, I think it was a few years ago when Florida first hired Dan Mullen, stuff like that. They were ranked in the top 15, even with a new coach. That's what I don't understand.
Where did they finish?
They still finished in the top 25.
No, they finished it. Are you talking about Dan Mullen in Florida, his first year this past season?
No.
I thought you just said.
He's been at Florida for 4 years. No, he's been at Florida for a while. When he first got hired, which it was like 2013, I believe, or I can't remember what year. But
who are you talking about?
Dan Mullen.
Dan Mullen coached his first season at Florida last year.
Who was the coach before him?
Jim McElwain.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. After Jim McElwain left, I think the Gators were still, even with Dan Mullen being a new coach, they still ranked them in the top 10. Why is that?
And my question to you was, where did they finish?
They finished
in the top 10.
The top 50. Yeah, in the top 10 still. That's
okay.
What I don't get. He was a new coach, even though that's what I'm saying with Manny Diaz. Why don't they give him a little bit of credit, because he was at the school before as a defensive coordinator?
Dan Mullen is the new coach at Florida, was a new coach at Florida entering last season. He was not a new head coach. He's a wealth of experience. He has a wealth of experience as a head coach in the SEC, and he had a wealth of experience as an offensive coordinator and knowing the culture, the climate, the atmosphere, and everything, the administration and the vibe, and everything involved at Florida, having been there a decade earlier. Don't confuse Manny Diaz and Dan Mullen and their preparedness for these two jobs. I'm not saying that Manny Diaz won't be a fine college football head coach, but to compare him and Dan Mullen at this point shouldn't happen.
Yeah, but wasn't Manny Diaz a defensive corner for like 2 years at Miami? That's what I'm saying.
Yes, he's staying at the same program. Yes, he is.
Yeah, no, that's what I don't understand. People don't give him credit for the stuff he accomplished as a defensive coordinator, and now he's going to transfer that as a head coach.
Let me put it this way. At the conclusion of last year, where would you have ranked Miami? They were the what ranked team
30.
In the country? 30?
30.
I think that's a little generous. I think that's a little generous considering they lost by 4 scores plus 5 scores to Wisconsin in a bowl game, and they lost 5 games in what was most likely the worst conference in America. I don't think that they were the 30th best team in the country at the end of last season.
Okay, fine, like 45.
Okay, 45. That seems pretty fair. 40-45 range for Miami at the end of last season. What has happened since then? They have lost some tremendous talent along the defensive front. They lost their 1,000-yard rushing running back. They've lost one of their 3 or 4 top receivers in Lawrence Cager. They've recruited well, reasonably well. Their offensive line is suspect. They lost one of their top defensive backs. Their linebackers are all back. So they're in reasonably good shape in terms of personnel, but they did get hit hard along the defensive front. They're going to be playing either in a completely inexperienced quarterback or a quarterback in N'Kosi Perry that played about 5 or 6 games last year. They've got a new head coach, and I know as much as Miami fans are happy, ecstatic that it's Manny Diaz and not Mark Richt, and they think Mark Richt is the worst coach that ever walked on the planet, from an objective standpoint, you're going from a known factor to an unknown factor as a head coach. I think the ranking for Miami is low if you're just strictly looking at talent. If you're looking at who has the most talented rosters in college football, Miami certainly has a more than 27 or 28th ranked talent roster in college football. But they have inconsistency at quarterback coming back and inexperience, and they have an inexperienced head coach, and they have a schedule that appears to be fairly easy. So again, there's another distinction we need to make. Are we ranking the team, or are we ranking the team against the schedule?
Ranking the team, both.
Because you understand my point. You could have the best team in the country. Let's say Clemson suddenly, we gave Clemson a schedule of Oklahoma, Ohio State, Alabama. They had to play those teams every week. They had to play the 12 best teams in the country. Well, Clemson suddenly is not going to go undefeated or lose 1 game or 2 games. They might go like 9-3. So they would still possibly be the best team in the country. They could still be the best team in the country, but they wouldn't have the best record in the country. So the schedule plays into it, of course.
Okay. Yeah, now I understand what you're saying. The ranking is based on their schedule. Their strength of schedule, basically.
It depends how you do it. So I was explaining before you called that I may release 2 rankings before the season starts. I may release a ranking that says these are, in my opinion, the 25 best teams in the country from 1 to 25, regardless of the schedule they play. I just believe that's the best team, that's the second best, that's the third best, and so on. But then I'll release another ranking that is basically, these are the rankings because I believe that these teams against their schedules are going to do this, and they should be ranked at the end of the season 1 through 25 like this.
Okay. Yeah, now I understand what you're saying.
For example, get this, Anthony. In the ESPN Football Power Index, they are ranking Auburn as the 9th best team in the country. They believe that Auburn is the 9th best team in the country, but they are not predicting that Auburn is going to be the 9th ranked team in the country because they're predicting Auburn to win 7.7 games. So 7-5 or 8-4, because the schedule's brutal. And they've got Oregon in 10th place, 1 spot below Auburn, but they've got Oregon with 9.7 wins because their schedule's easier.
Okay. Is Clemson is their schedule brutal this year, or is it fairly easy?
It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy.
Who's the toughest schedule in the country this
year? Well, Anthony, if I told you that, it would give away my schedule rankings. So I don't know if you're following along with my schedule rankings. Alabama is the toughest schedule in the country?
No, I'm assuming it's going to be Alabama.
No. Do they? That has the toughest schedule in the country? No. I have ranked Alabama's schedule around 22nd, I believe. I'm right now in the process, Anthony. I've ranked all the schedules from 70 all the way up to number 1. I'm releasing those schedule rankings. So we're at about number 15 right now. I think I released Northwestern was 16, Michigan 15, and then somebody else was at 14, Colorado, I think.
Okay. Thank you for answering my call.
All right, Anthony.
How they rank.
You have a great night. It's our guy, Anthony. Calls us on a regular basis to talk some college football. All right. Yeah, so these rankings, we've got Clemson at number 1. Okay. Seems reasonable that they go 12-0 or 11-1. Who are they going to lose to? Texas A&M at home, Florida State. That's pretty much it. South Carolina would be the third best candidate to beat them. The 2 games that Clemson plays outside the division are Georgia Tech and Duke. No, they played Duke last year. Georgia Tech and I don't remember. Georgia Tech, maybe North Carolina. It doesn't matter. It's one of those teams that it's a 6-6 kind of team. They play Georgia Tech and North Carolina. All right. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4.
MCD Sports 4. How are you?
I'm doing all right. But I've looked at these football talent index rankings.
Yeah.
And these rankings are crap, Mark. I mean,
where's
Auburn is the 9th best team in the country. They're saying Tennessee's the 15th best team in the country.
Well, that's a stretch, boy.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Auburn's not even shouldn't even be ranked going into week 1, in my opinion. But they'll rank them because they're going to try and hype up that Oregon-Auburn game. But, I mean, I'm fine with 1, 2, and 3. But outside of that, I think Oklahoma should be number 4, and then probably LSU 5, Michigan 6, and go from there.
So MCD Sports 4, as soon as you mention the name Michigan, I wonder how much we are influenced, and I'm going to point to not you specifically, but you, the viewer, more so than myself. I try to pull myself back from being affected by these other people's rankings as best I can. But how much of our perception that Michigan is going to win the Big Ten, or that Michigan is the 4th or 5th or 6th best team in the country, is just strictly because this is what we're being told? Not that we've determined this ourselves, but the media is telling us that Michigan's one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. Therefore, we just believe that somehow, some way, they must be the 4th or 5th best team in the country, when at the end of last year, they were one of the 15 best teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, personally, you know that these rankings are going to be flipped upside down at the end of the year. Like, I caught up earlier saying Alabama's not going to be in college football playoffs. I'm sticking to that. I think that it's going to be Clemson, Georgia, Oregon, and Oklahoma. So I think those are my 4 teams.
Okay. Well, if they're going to be completely flipped on their head, our 4 playoff teams are going to be Rice, UTEP, South Alabama, and Old Dominion. Those are going to be our 4 playoff teams because they right now are ranked 127, 128, 129, and 130.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be amazing to see those teams go undefeated, but they won't. But I'm just talking about, like, theoretically, like the top, like Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU are not going to be your 4 top teams at the end of the year. Only because they're not going to put 3 teams in the SEC in.
Okay. So we were talking about this before you called MCD Sports 4. I don't know if you heard my explanation, but you understand that it's possible to have, let's say, the four best teams in the country be playing in one conference, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have the record of the four best teams in the country. Those are two different things. So ESPN is telling us that they believe that Alabama, Georgia, and LSU are three of the four best teams in the country. That doesn't mean that they're telling us that they're going to be in the playoff.
I hope that there's no three SEC teams in the playoffs. I hope there isn't.
Oh, well, I hope there isn't either. I will throw a fit nonstop until the next season, week 1. I won't be able to do enough call-in shows if the SEC or any conference, but it would be the SEC, would get 3 teams into the playoff. I don't think anybody should get 2 teams into the playoff.
I mean, you got 2 teams in before.
Yeah.
The SEC. I mean, personally, I think Pac-12 is going to make a comeback this year because I told you Oregon's going to get in without making the conference championship game out.
Oh, yeah, that's right. How in the world is that going to happen? I know you explained it to me. Don't go through the explanation. You explained that to us. What I mean by saying that is MCD Sports 4, you have to understand, because of the perception of the conference, to have a team a la Alabama in 2017 make the college football playoff without getting to the conference championship game with the perception that the Pac-12 has, how is that's not going to happen?
I don't think a 2-loss Alabama and a 2-loss Ohio State would get in over a 1-loss Oregon. I just don't think that will happen. I don't think we're going to play a 2-loss team in the college football playoffs.
Did those 2 teams, either one of those teams, win their conference?
No, I have Alabama losing in the SEC championship, and I do have Ohio State winning their championship game, but I have them losing 2 games in the regular season.
An Oregon team that loses 1 game and doesn't get to the conference championship game is going to get in over Ohio State with 2 losses, but wins the Big Ten.
Yep, that's what I think is going to happen. I really think that the committee is purposely either purposely banning the Big Ten after getting shut down back-to-back years, or they don't have any respect for the Big Ten. That's what I think is going to
happen. It would be silly if the committee, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying it would be silly, and beyond silly, it would be completely unjust for the selection committee or anybody on the selection committee or anybody connected to this selection process. It's not really a playoff, it's a selection process. Would be banning a conference or looking down on any conference or any team or any pro. I don't care if Oklahoma went to the playoff 10 consecutive years and didn't score a point and lost 50-0 for 10 straight years. That should have nothing to do with the next season's evaluation. It shouldn't. It does, but it shouldn't.
It's just a theory that I have because Ohio State, I thought if Notre Dame lost the game last year, I thought Ohio State was scooped in at 4.
Yeah.
Over Georgia, but they put Georgia ahead of Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's why I came up with that theory.
Sure. I understand your theory. There's certainly been evidence of it the last 2 years. But if you're going to hold seasons past against the Big Ten, for example, and say, well, they got shut out 2 years in a row. Well, what's to determine that you're stopping at 2015 in your evaluation and not going back another year to 2014? What's the difference? You go back to 2014, the Big Ten won the national championship and did something that the Pac-12 hasn't done and the Big 12 hasn't done, and that's win a national championship.
Correct. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But, I mean,
It's just a theory, but I'm pretty confident in my 4 teams. And I really think that Oregon's going to get in without winning the Pac-12, even going to the Pac-12 championship. Because that Washington going 11-1, but they lose the Pac-12 championship against Utah.
Okay.
Utah's going to lose 3 games this year. So
last year, I feel pretty good about my prediction last year, even though I missed 2. I only got 2 out of 4 because if you really look at the teams that I selected, they came razor close to getting in. I picked Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia. No, Clemson and Georgia. Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. That was my 4.
You picked Florida?
No, I picked Clemson, okay, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State last year.
Okay.
Where are your Terps in these power rankings? Let's see here.
Terrible. I mean, they only have us winning 2. They have us at 4-8, but they only have us really favored in 2 games. I mean, they only they don't even like have us favored against teams like Indiana, Temple, Syracuse. I think Syracuse is going to take a bit of a step back. Minnesota, tired of that hype on Minnesota, but I'm looking at them. I really am. I'm really sick and tired of the hype on Minnesota. There's no hype. I don't see the hype. I really don't. I think they're a 6-6, 7-5 team. They beat some
6-6.
teams in the Big 12 at the end of the year. That's all they did. I mean, what do they want? Cookie?
They have Minnesota. They have Minnesota at number 28, and they have your beloved Terps at 68.
Yeah, that should be much closer. Much closer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, I think these FPI rankings kind of just favor the talent on the teams, though, more than anything. Because even though Maryland, they have 2 top 25 recruiting classes on their team right now, so I don't know.
They have Minnesota ranked ahead of Washington State, Nebraska, Stanford, UCF, TCU, Oklahoma State, Wisconsin, Kentucky,
Virginia's a dark horse for me.
Yeah.
I think they make a New Year's Six Bowl.
Virginia and Boise State. Yes, I would probably right this second pick Virginia to win the ACC Coastal.
Yep.
The rankings, the predictions are not out yet, so people don't jump all over me.
Yeah, I just can't wait to see the prediction show and see how much ESPN homers the SEC and the Big Ten. So.
Well, it is the best conference, the SEC.
True, but the Big Ten isn't even the second best conference.
It's not.
The Big 12 is. No, the Big 12 is.
The Big 12 is better than the Big 10.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, I don't see that.
It's close, but Big 12 is better than the Big 10. I mean, the Big 10 has not produced a playoff team in 2 or 3 years.
That's almost to its credit. Well, that's your argument that the Big 12 is better than the Big 10 is that the Big 10 has not been selected for the playoff the last 2 years.
And the Big 12, I think, is deeper.
Who did Ohio State lose to get knocked out of the playoffs? Well, not that they should have been knocked out of the playoffs, but who were they knocked out according to the selection committee? They lost to other Big 10 teams.
They got blown out by a Big 10 team.
Mm-hmm.
And Oklahoma did go up there and beat Ohio State 31-16. But I know
sure.
they split the series.
They split the series. Yeah. Yeah, I really don't see where the Big 12 is better than the Big 10. I just believe in Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State, depth, Iowa. What games were played between the Big 10 and the Big 12 last year? Iowa beat Iowa State. So there's a team that went 5-4 in the Big 10, beating a 6-3 team in the Big 12. Sure, it's a rivalry game. It still counts. We're still going to count the game. Who else? The Big 10 and the Big 12 last year. Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State. None of those teams played anybody in the Big 12.
We played Texas.
Texas, Maryland. Maryland beat Texas. There you go. There's 2-0 for the Big 10. 2-0. Northwestern did not play anyone in the Big 12. Were there only 2 games between the Big 12 and the Big 10 last year? What am I missing? Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa. We got them. Wisconsin didn't play anyone in the Big 12. Nebraska did not. Yeah, I think that's about it. Those were the only 2 games. That was it. Those 2 games. Oh, Rutgers and Kansas. We'll give one for the Big 12. Kansas beat Rutgers. That was a huge game. Enormous game. So the Big 10 won 2 out of 3 against the Big 12 last year. So that proves nothing.
Yeah. Ohio State TCU.
Oh, yeah. 3-1. Thank you very much. 3-1 Big 10. But that's not really a fair game. Big 10 champion taking on like a 5-4 team. 5-4, maybe 4-5 in the Big 12. No, 4-5. Yeah, I think they were 4-5. So that's really not a fair comparison. But Iowa State is certainly, and Kansas Rutgers is.
I mean, overall, I just think that I think the Big 12, if you look at like outside of Oklahoma and Ohio State, I mean, it's a tough argument now, but I think there was a point that the Big 12 was better than the Big 10 in the past few years.
I think we would have to go back to like 2011 or 2012.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I just viewed it as Oklahoma. The Big 12 picks a team out every year, and in the playoffs, and the Big 10 has not.
So you are resting the decision between who you believe is a better conference, the Big 10 or the Big 12, on the selection committee's determination.
Kind of.
MCD Sports 4. We're better than that. We're better than that. All right, you think about that. Don't let some selection committee determine for you who you think the best teams and conferences are.
Okay.
All right. You have a great night. Thanks for the call as always.
Okay.
All right, MCD Sports 4 listening to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And for as much as I have questioned their decisions, I do believe that they've got it is an impossible job. I was going to say an almost impossible job. It is an impossible job. It's impossible. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. All right. Yes, Apex Orca 78. We're better than that. Army was good last year. James Scott, 27 watching, less than a third. Thumbs up. We need more thumbs up, more likes. All right, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yo, it's Deep Barat.
Deep Barat. How are you?
Late night edition. Lovely, man. I think it's been a long time. So, yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective on a couple things. Over-unders are out for the year, according to some sources. And I just wanted to get your opinion on a couple of over-unders, kind of the averages. Do you think that Clemson's going to go undefeated this year? Do you think they're going to have like a step-up game?
Oh, I think that there's a possible trip up for any team, and certainly they are one of them. Now, if they had to play an SEC schedule or even a Big 12 schedule, that probability would go up considerably over what they have to deal with in the ACC, where Florida State's the big wild card. Florida State could either rebound from 5-7 and be a legit top 15 type of team and win 9 games, or who knows, maybe they're decline continues. So Florida State to me is the biggest wild card in the ACC, if not the country. But outside that, the rest of the division, they play in a solid division, but I think you would agree there are no anywhere close to elite teams, not even very good teams in the division. They're just there's a lack of bad teams in their division. They have a very good division with a lot of 7-5 type of teams. Boston College, Wake Forest, Syracuse, NC State should take a step back after going 9-4 last year. So Clemson will have capable teams to play, but not teams that can threaten them. And then their out of division schedule is North Carolina and Georgia Tech. So that's a lightweight schedule. They get Texas A&M at home. Do I believe I would give Clemson about a 65 to 70% chance of going undefeated? And therefore, I'm tempted to lay some money on Clemson with the over-under, considering that I can't imagine them losing 2 games in the regular season and me losing money. I could imagine they lose 1 game and we hit 11 and it's a push and I get my money back.
Yeah, I think this year it's going to kind of be difficult for Clemson to go undefeated simply because it's tough to go undefeated several seasons in a row. But two, Clemson is known to go Clemsoning for 1 game in the ACC, and usually it's Syracuse. And I know that Syracuse almost beat them last year, but this year they actually go to Syracuse.
Yeah, where they lost 2 years ago.
Right, and I don't think that Syracuse is a bad program. I mean, I know that they're not like a top 10 program, which is probably not in the college football playoff conversation or maybe even in the year 6 bowl, but they are a solid top 20 team that if the form of their day, I think they can upset anybody, particularly the likes of Clemson in the past. So that's a big watch-out game for upset alert.
I know that Syracuse finished in the top 15 deep rot last year, but I would be I will say I will be surprised if Syracuse maintains a top 15 program ranking this season. I don't think they're a top 15 team.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, but last year they were, right? And I think that they have the ingredients to pull off an upset. They'll have absolutely nothing to lose, especially if, a team like Clemson comes in. I think they would relish the opportunity to beat the number 1 team, defending champions, on their home turf. Now, again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think that that's probably one of the best chances of a team like Clemson to lose. I'd also look up from Miami, but that would be in the ACC championship game. I don't believe they play in the regular season. But yeah, to give your opinion on that, and I also wanted to kind of hear your perspective. I mean, I kind of agree on this. Being a Texas fan, the over-under for Texas this year is approximately 10. So I think it could be higher than 10, it could be lower than 10. But I think that's just not fair, and I think that the Big 12 Media Days just finished recently, and in the Big 12 Media Days, I think the overall vote, and I think that it should be until it changes otherwise, that Oklahoma is projected to finish this year. Now, there were a lot more first-place votes from Texas this year than from last year. I think there were no first-place votes for Texas last year. It was 760 the previous year. But the point is that Oklahoma still has that perception that they're winning of the Big 12 title, and they're going to have that 11. I think that Oklahoma won is around 10.5 or 11, so it's just 1 game higher than Texas. But, it should be interesting to see what happens in the Big 12 this year. But,
Deeper rot. Let's play this game. Let's go through the positions. Texas versus Oklahoma. Quarterback. Who is a better quarterback?
I would have to. I mean,
Yes,
Hurts.
he is. He is. We discussed this a few weeks ago. I think Sam Ehlinger is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country in that range, maybe 6th, but in the top 5 range. And Jalen Hurts is more like a top 20 quarterback. Sam Ehlinger is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, as well. Who has better running backs, Texas or Oklahoma?
I would probably, to be honest, give that edge to Oklahoma slightly, even though Texas does have Keontae Ingram, which is due for a breakout sophomore year. I think I gave my opinion on him. And then also look up for Jordan Whittington, who was a 5-star, who's going to be playing running back now. But again, I have to give my edge based on actual proven experience to Oklahoma slightly.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Oklahoma decidedly. Not from a talent standpoint, but as you mentioned, from a production standpoint,
Texas has a running quarterback, which can help them.
Sure. Okay. But one of the reasons why we're rating Texas as well at quarterback is because of his running ability. So anyway, I'm separating the units. So at wide receiver, who has the better wide receivers? I go Oklahoma slightly.
Yeah, I think Texas losing McCoy should hurt them. I think they have more than enough talent with Colin Johnson. I would say that's a split, but you can say that based on past experience. And also Oklahoma loses Marquise Brown.
Yes.
Only proven receiver. And I'm not saying off of high school recruits or like high school.
I don't know that he.
Proven college level.
Wait a minute.
I think it's CD Lamb.
Sure. Oklahoma has proven receivers. They got the Calcaterra kid. They've got CD Lamb. They've got proven receivers coming back. Yeah, I was factoring in all those guys as receivers. Okay, offensive line. Oklahoma's got a better offensive line. I know they lose 4 starters. They've got a better offensive line.
I think the perception that you're going to base that off of is that Oklahoma will, I guess, their coach will live up to the name of coach the offensive line to the same degree as the previous one. But again, based on actual experience, I think that Texas has some of the top offensive. I'm not going to say all 5 of the O-line at Texas are comparatively better, but you look at Zach Shackelford, who's projected to go in some of the first rounds of the draft, maybe not the first round, but the early rounds of the draft. Considered Big 12 first O-lineman this coming year. Parker Braun, who's a grad transfer from Georgia Tech, who's not going to be playing at Texas as a starter. I'm not saying he's confirmed as a starter, but people are projecting him to be a starter this coming year. He's a first-team All-ACC, so they definitely have a lot of experienced talent on the O-line for Texas this year. There's 2 guys that are going to be critical. Then, of course, you have Samuel Cosby, a couple of other guys who are slightly less experienced. They're probably not that big of a name. But I think the O-line comparison is a lot closer than you think this year. But, yeah, I guess for the benefit of the doubt, I guess you can give it to Oklahoma because they did draft everyone in the past.
And then to move this along, defensively, I take Texas on every level.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably undisputed. And I think that, again, I'm not saying this because I am a Texas fan, but I looked at the defensive replacements this year compared to last year, and a lot of those guys actually look a lot better. Now, I'm not trying to say that because I'm a Texas fan, but if you look at the D linemen, right, like Malcolm Roach, a couple of those other guys, Keandre Coburn, the 2 starters, Malcolm Roach, Keandre Coburn, two senior guys, like they're actually 50 to 60 pounds heavier in weight muscle compared to Brecken Hager, a couple of those undrafted 2 or 3-star guys who were starters last year. So I think that the talent level in the line is going to improve for Texas this year. Now, we don't know how good they're going to be because they weren't starters last year. So they weren't, we don't know what their S&P production metrics are going to be because they're not returning starters, right? Not all of them, but hands down, Texas has the best defense among the best defenses in the Big 12. I think that TCU, a couple of those other teams could produce better overall defense, but talent-wise, Texas should have a good defense in 2019. So that could make a difference. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make.
You don't think
in general, right? Like Big 12
Well, I think that's the most important thing we've talked about. If you've got a substantially better defense and on every level, I think that that could. I'm going to have to think long and hard about this Big 12 prediction. All right, Deeparat, we appreciate the call.
Yeah, so I just want to get your final thoughts. I think it's pretty fair, right? I guess, or kind of hard to say at this point.
Do I think what's fair?
Comparison between Texas and Oklahoma this year.
Yeah, we just went through it. I think it's very fair. I think that if we just looked at two personnel units and looked at the rosters, meaning we weren't swayed by perception of Oklahoma being the Ohio State to Texas's Michigan, then we would have probably different predictions on the Oklahoma-Texas race for the Big 12 championship. But that's stuck in people's minds that Oklahoma wins this thing, that they're going to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to your Big 12 videos coming up. So you should hopefully shed some more light into the issue.
Absolutely.
Mark, have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks, Deeparat. All right. I was just somewhat amused by a comment that just came in from Dustin Conaway, who's commenting on my Iowa schedule ranking and record projection. So I was cutting on Iowa's schedule because the Hawkeyes have, along with Iowa State, the most boring schedule in college football every year, because they both play 3 non-conference games and they play, and whoever's calling, you got to hang on for just a second. Whoever's calling, hang on just a second. Iowa State play the most boring schedules in college football because they schedule 2 MAC or FCS teams and then they schedule each other. Therefore, we know who their Power 5 opponent's going to be because they don't schedule anybody else. Iowa has recently against Pitt a few years ago, but besides that, they don't schedule anybody else. So this guy is basically saying here, you said Iowa will never play LSU. I'm pretty sure we played them in a bowl game. We played number 18 Mississippi State in one. Anyway, he goes into this whole thing about Iowa playing out of conference games against Power 5 teams in bowl games. I was posting a video about their schedule, their regular season schedule, not who they play in bowl games. So, all right, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, who's on the line?
Mark, it's 2880.
Oh,
28, Mark.
Good to have you on. What's up?
Good to be on, man. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I'm just a bit annoyed by the last comment I read, but that's fine.
I could tell. I could tell. Mark, I just had a quick comment on the position comparison between Texas and Oklahoma.
Yes.
Is that any different from last year? Because if we went through the same comment last year and we said compare Oklahoma's offense, Oklahoma would have the advantage on offense. Compare Texas' defense, Texas would have the advantage on defense.
Yep. Okay.
So if the comparison is the same, the results would likely be the same.
Okay. What were the results?
The result is Oklahoma won the Big 12.
That is the final result. Absolutely.
That is the final result. Yes, sir.
That is the final result. The two teams did play 2 games, and they split.
They did. And here's my issue with this, Mark. Here's my issue with Texas. Okay? We're going to go back to 2015. All right? Because this is when Oklahoma made the first playoff in their first conference of their first title of these 4 in a row.
Yes.
Right? Post Dallas. Of course, they meet every year in Dallas, that 4th, 5th, 6th game of the year. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Post Dallas. Texas has played 26 games in the Big 12.
Okay.
Against Big 12 opponents over those 4 years.
Yep.
The record is 13-13.
Okay.
With 5 home losses. They've got a loss to every team in the Big 12 other than Baylor.
Yep.
By comparison.
Sure.
Oklahoma's played 28 opponents over that same period of time. Oklahoma's record is 28-0. Oklahoma doesn't lose to the other teams in the Big 12. So when we start factoring in who wins the conference, we just can't say head-to-head who wins that game. There's 8 other teams in the conference besides them. You have to beat them too. Texas doesn't. Oklahoma does. That's why Oklahoma wins the conference.
So it's a very compelling case that you make. It's partially skewed by the time frame. So I buy your statistics to a degree. So we are not talking about, when we go back to 2015 in Texas, we're not talking about Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, the coach in 2015, all the way through Urban Meyer at Ohio State, and pick your program. We're talking about 2 entirely different programs in regards to Texas. Yes, there was a personnel carryover from regime to regime, but we're talking about Charlie Strong. Now we're talking about Tom Herman. So your 4-year comparison split between 2 coaching staffs, for one thing.
Well, my 4-year comparison is based on the 4 championships that Oklahoma's won in terms of them winning the Big 12.
So Oklahoma's had continuity, even though they changed head coaches. They've had very strong continuity during that time.
Coaching change.
But Texas hasn't had continuity during that time.
And they still, really honest to goodness, don't have continuity. Not yet. This is premature. This whole we're back thing, talking about a 4-loss season. Who celebrates 4-loss seasons, Mark? Find me a power that's celebrating 4-loss season. Any of them. Nobody does. This is hype. When you talk about Michigan and people selling magazines and putting Michigan ahead of Ohio State, the same thing people do when they put Texas ahead of Oklahoma. There's no factual basis on which to put them ahead of Oklahoma. None. Zero. Zilch. Zero. Why would you put them ahead of Oklahoma based on what?
Well, there is such a thing as, when you make predictions, projecting into the future. And there are changes that are going to take place in the landscape of college football, you would have to agree, at some point in all these conferences, correct? The landscape of college football is not going to look the same in 10 years as it does now. There are going to be power shifts. So if you're going to make predictions, you can make conservative predictions and just say Ohio State's going to continue to win the Big Ten and dominate the Big Ten every year. Oklahoma's going to continue to dominate the Big 12. Alabama's going to continue. Clemson's going to continue. You can do that, and you're going to probably have more right predictions than wrong predictions by far, because those teams will stay in place for a relative long period of time, and the probabilities are that they will remain in positions of power. But if you want to be somewhat of a visionary and make a calculated risk, then you're going to try to determine, okay, where is there going to be a change this year? Where is there going to be a change?
I can understand that to some degree. I guess my question would be, certain conferences get that change, because you can also be a visionary and pick Georgia. You could be a visionary and pick Michigan or Michigan State. You could be a visionary and pick someone other than Clemson. But the visionary seems to be always with the Big 12. West Virginia to win the Big, Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 in 2017. Texas to win the Big 12 in 2018. And Oklahoma has won their conference more since 2000 than any team in college football.
What are the numbers there?
Oklahoma has 12 conference championships since 2000. Nobody else has 12.
Okay. Ohio State has to be extremely close to that, since they've won the conference almost every year since 2005. But anyway, I'm not going to dispute that. You must be correct. And Ohio State and Oklahoma have dominated their conferences during this century like no other 2 teams in the nation.
For certain, yes.
And Alabama fans who are younger than like 20 years old will need to educate themselves on what happened prior to 2008.
Yes. But it doesn't seem like the best place to pick. This is where the variance is going to come, when they're actually the most consistent team out there in terms of winning their conference.
Absolutely.
That's actually the biggest lock there is in college football over the last 20 years, to say Oklahoma wins the Big 12. That's the biggest lock there is.
Yes.
So that's not the place. If I was going to gamble, that's not the place I would gamble.
Your argument's very compelling. So when I approach predictions, I do so from a very I'll say, naive and forthright and honest and transparent way. I'm not trying to make myself look good or protect myself. If I believe I need to go for it in a particular conference or a particular situation where I believe, okay, I could play it safe, pick that team like everybody else will. And even if they don't pull through, just say, well, everybody else picked so and so, and I did as well. We were wrong. But if I see an opportunity, so for example, last year, I picked Utah to go to the Pac 12 championship game. I did all the metrics and measurements, and Utah by far had the most difficult schedule in the Pac 12. So I stated this that I'm I'm making a calculated risk. Unfortunately, they've been gifted with the most difficult schedule in the Pac-12 in conference play, so their road's going to be more difficult than all their competitors in their division, but still I think they're going to overcome that and win. Now, that's not a great example because that's not an outlandish prediction, but I don't make outlandish predictions just to get people riled up and determine clickbait, so I get views, similar to what you're accusing magazines of doing, and we know that they do. I'm not going to accuse any particular specific magazine, but it's done
Sure.
to yes, to sell magazines. Hey, we're going to rile some people up and pick Michigan to upset Ohio State and Texas to upset Oklahoma, and we're going to throw some kind of wild outlandish pick in there just to do it, because they're running a business. My predictions are just what they are. I'm not trying to play conservative so nobody criticizes me and I don't look foolish at the end of the year, but I'm also not just haphazardly throwing out a crazy prediction that TCU is going to win the national championship just because I want to cause a stir.
You know what, Mark? I think sometimes when we make predictions, I think what happens is there's a preconceived notion before we start, and we already have our objective
absolutely.
in mind before we make the prediction. So, in other words, if I say my 4 playoff teams are Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, and Ohio State, then somewhere along the line, I have to make sure that those other teams become outsiders. So I have to pick that Notre Dame's going to lose a game somewhere along the line. I have to pick that Oklahoma's going to lose a game somewhere along the line. I have to pick LSU's going to get beat by this team or Georgia. You got to knock those other teams out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what happens with a lot of predictions oftentimes. And that's why I say predictions are kind of, they're not honest predictions because I already have, my goal is already set before I even go on my journey.
So I did something last year in looking at my predictions, and I made predictions to start, and then I checked myself on something because I think, except for those people that are trying to make an outlandish prediction and look for that opportunity to do so, we all tend to be, most of us, I should say, tend to be conservative. Meaning, if we see that Ohio State's 11-1 every year, 11-1, 11-1, well, they're going to go 11-1. Our perception is probably skewed too heavily on what has happened currently or most recently. So what I did was I looked back last season to the difference between, so this was going into 2018, the record difference between 2016 and 2017. And I was astounded. I put some kind of metric on it. And I was astounded that over like 40% of the teams in the country their win totals varied, either increased or declined by 3 or more. That surprised me that many teams in the country had that much of a variation in win total from one year to the other. So then I looked at my predictions, which were very conservative, and I thought, I need to look for more opportunities where things are going to change. It's just like this. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you roll with this, is it's like when I make football predictions every week. And I predict all the top 25 games, and then anything else that's compelling. If Notre Dame's playing Purdue, and I think it's a compelling game, and neither team's in the top 25, I'll add it in. So the top 25 games plus some relevant games. And I started to track this a few years ago. That again, it's my nature to stay conservative and barely pick an upset. But I figured out that 20 to 25% of the games every week are going to be upsets. So out of those 25 games, I need to find 5 or 6 upsets because they're going to be there. So I might as well try to figure out where they're going to occur.
You know what, Mark, and I'd agree with that. I think that's that makes a lot of sense. My only question is, so how many times do we call Alabama as the team that gets upset? And how many times do we call Ohio State as the team that gets upset?
Well, Alabama, like never. Nobody ever
and how many times
projects
we call Ohio
them.
State a team? Because I know Oklahoma's been called to be upset several times. Like even last year we played West Virginia.
Yeah, sure.
Late in the year. Well, and it was kind of interesting to me that the pick was West Virginia based on the fact that West Virginia was playing at home.
So I went.
The statistics tell. Or go ahead.
No, I don't want to take you off your path. Keep going.
The statistics actually conveyed that Oklahoma, since 2014, October 2014, Oklahoma lost the game at TCU 37-33.
Yep.
That's the last time Oklahoma lost a game on the road, a true road game. October 2014. 20 straight wins on the road. Oklahoma's been to Tennessee. They've been to Columbus. They've been to West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
They've been to Stillwater. They've been to Fort Worth. They've been to Ames. They haven't lost a game now in close to 5 years on the road. So why would we say West Virginia playing at home, that's how they beat Oklahoma? Oklahoma does well on the road. They are a dominant road team. That's the longest win streak in the country on the road, true road games. That doesn't include the games, the neutral site games against Texas, and of course the bowl games. But when you go to somebody else's stadium, Oklahoma hasn't lost a game since 2014, October 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand why we would say West Virginia beats Oklahoma because that game's in Morgantown, or Oklahoma State wins this year because the game's in Stillwater. If we do the analysis will tell us something completely different.
That's because the lazy. I'm sorry to cut you off. That's because the lazy analysis looks at. This is stated all the time. I don't go to it as many times as other people that I see and hear from and read that are very much convicted to home and road. I would pick Michigan to finally beat Ohio State, but they've got to go to Columbus this year. And yes, that is a factor. Teams generally play considerably, decidedly better at home than on the road. But this is not an across the board. Everyone plays 8% better at home than on the road. There is no advantage to playing in Lawrence, Kansas for the Jayhawks. There is no advantage for Cal to play at Cal Berkeley. Maybe the statistics would show us otherwise. Maybe there is, but there's no home crowd advantage there. So there's a variation in advantages of playing home and road games for various teams and various schools. It's not across the board.
That's another reason why I look at when people talk about the Texas LSU game this year, and one of the first comments is that game's in Austin. Well, the West Virginia game was in Austin last year, and the Maryland game was in Austin 2 years ago. Under Herman, and the Texas Tech game was in Austin 2 years ago too. They lost 3 games in 2 years under Herman. So it's not like this is they're not the team in orange that runs down and hits the rock playing at home. You know, they're not Clemson playing at home. So they can be beaten, they can be taken. So, you know what I mean? There's no obvious advantage there. There's no huge advantage there. But people are going to say that, well, they're playing that game at home, so you got to go with them. Not so fast.
Yes, your evidence is very compelling. Again, I'm not going to take it the full distance because I do think that these are two different Texas programs. Sure, the transition of talent went from roster to roster under Strong and then under Herman. Of course, it wasn't, it's not an NFL team, but so there was some continuity of talent spanning both regimes. But I do think that Texas football is in much better shape right now than they were in 2015.
I think they're in better shape. I'm not sure how it totally plays out.
I will make another
again,
distinction. Just to answer your original question, 28-80-28. I do think that there's another distinction between these two programs and these two specific teams, I should say, the 2019 versions that we didn't address, and I may have mentioned a few weeks ago. So, where would you have rated Baker Mayfield as a collegiate quarterback against his competition at that position? He was what?
I thought Baker was the best quarterback. I thought he was the best
Okay.
quarterback in America.
I would agree. I didn't necessarily think that at the time, but in retrospect, I would agree. Yes. Okay. How about Kyler Murray?
I thought Kyler was the best quarterback in America.
I would agree. Do you think that Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in America?
No.
Okay.
Now, full disclosure, Mark, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to torque my Bama friends off. I'm not a big Hurts fan. I actually wish Spencer Rattler would have come in early, and actually wish Murray would have stuck around another year, but since that was just not going to happen, I wish Rattler would have come in January instead of June, because I think he could have competed and won the starting job. I'm not sold on Hurts. I'm hoping he can do the job, but there's so many shootouts in the Big 12, and Baker and Kyler both had those games where you couldn't have 3 possessions where you didn't hit open receivers and miss guys or throw the ball behind guys. You couldn't, because you would lose those games.
Exactly.
We won games 61-46 because those guys were outstanding. Because they were brilliant. We won 51-46. If you're just a little bit off, you lose that game 46-42.
So that's where I see
I'm not sold on her.
Yeah, so that's where I see the opening here, is that you don't have the best quarterback in the country. You have the 20th best quarterback in the country.
But you know what, though, Mark? I'll say this, too, though. Lincoln Riley, I think, is a genius, and he will get the most out of Hurts. Whatever there is to get out of him, he will get it. And the other thing is, I don't think that necessarily gives Texas an advantage, because Ellinger is a running quarterback who gets dinged a lot. And he's not an explosive runner like Kyler Murray. He's a fullback playing quarterback. He averages 2.9 yards a carry. He's slamming in the lines and taking on linebackers and safeties, and people praise him for that. But that's why you get dinged against Baylor, and you miss most of that game. It's why you come back and you're not 100% and you lose at Oklahoma State, and then you come back and you're not 100% again and then lose against West Virginia. Because you're running your quarterback like a fullback. They don't have a 1,000-yard back in their backfield. Not yet. Engelman had 700 some odd yards last year. The Whittington kid hasn't played it down. Right now, he's still a high school kid, so you can't put him on that level just yet. You're not proving anything at the D1 level yet. So right now, their top running back is a guy who averages 2.9 yards a carry, and it's Sam Ellinger. When they need yards, he's the one that has to go get it. One too many shots to the shoulder, and he's done. So then he's at risk. So just because Jalen Hurts is not Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray doesn't necessarily put Texas ahead of the game.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think about my prediction. I would tend to lean Oklahoma because I believe in Lincoln Riley's offense, and I believe that when push comes to shove, there is a psychological factor, and it's very similar to what we see at Ohio State and Michigan. And right now, Oklahoma believes that they own that conference, and they believe it, and it has yet to be disproven by the current group.
Yes. Yeah, I think the same thing with Ohio State and Michigan. If we can look at the Ohio State Michigan predictions for this year, and put our hands in the air and say, well, geez, why in the world would anybody bother to put Michigan ahead of Ohio State for the following reason? Because Michigan hasn't really proven it. We can't do that. We can't say that and then come back and say, well, Texas beats Oklahoma this year in the Big 12, because they haven't proven it.
No, they haven't. So again, I go back to one of my original points, is that when you make predictions, you can either go with what you have most recently seen and that not changing, or you can look for opportunities. If you're making responsible predictions, if there is such a thing, responsible predictions, and not trying to just cause a stir among people and just throw things out there just to get people riled up, but you're trying to make responsible predictions and be accurate, then you can go the conservative route and do exactly what you're saying and say, I'm not going to pick Michigan to win the Big Ten or Texas to win the Big 12 until it's proven to me, or Georgia to win the SEC until it's proven to me that they can do that. Well, then either you're going to continue to be correct until another team, a TCU or an LSU or somebody else sneaks in and becomes that team to knock off the behemoth, or you're going to be wrong this year because Georgia or Texas or Michigan's going to break through and do it. And then you'll be in that crowd of saying, okay, well, they finally did it, so maybe I'm going to consider them this next year.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, Mark. I'll be looking forward to your predictions this year to see if you jump off the ledge on any other conference other than the Big 12.
I don't know. Where that's going to be. I really don't know.
Find an opportunity with Clemson or an opportunity with Georgia, because Georgia's a top 5 team, I'm sure. Matter of fact, them being the top 5 team would make them more likely to win their conference, you would think, than Texas, which looks like a maybe top 12 team or so. 10, 12, somewhere in there. So you would think that Georgia might be the team that might be able to jump up and win in the SEC. But we'll see if you go that route, or if it turns back into Texas to win the Big 12 and everything else chalk.
Well, I already went that route, 28-80-28. I already went that route last year, and I got burned. And I thought that there was a chance that I would look pretty smart, because I predicted Oklahoma would be the best team in the Big 12 during the regular season, and Texas would win some kind of a crazy second-place tie, and they would take out Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. And with about 5 minutes left, they certainly had an opportunity to do so, but they didn't make it happen.
Mark, you should have talked to me. I could have told you. I could have had you straight down to September, Mark. I would have told you.
Yeah.
You've been good. You've been perfect on all your predictions.
I would have been right there, yes, because I had Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, and Washington. Yeah, I would have been perfect on my conference predictions. Yes, but I didn't want to be I did not want to be overly conservative, I guess. So I took my shot, and Texas almost came through for me.
They almost came through.
But it didn't happen. Oklahoma won that final 5 minutes.
Yes. Mark, thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And we'll be looking forward to going through the season with you.
Absolutely. Always appreciate the time. 28-80-28 in honor of all day, Mr. Adrian Peterson, who is going to suit up for the Washington Redskins, I would believe, again this season. He showed us something last year as an old-timer, still ripped off some nice gains, and he had a really big game late in the season or two. All right, let's see what's in the live chat. I need to do some editing before I go to bed, and that's going to take me some time, because I don't want to leave the cupboard bare on the channel tomorrow. And I've got so much material that I've cut here in recent days. We did some Notre Dame previews and others. Big Tex is already worried about the 2020 season. David doesn't believe that Cincinnati is the athletes and remembers Ohio State loses the game they shouldn't on the road. Eli has West Virginia going 2-10. Well, that's a bit rough. Tim, thank you. I don't know if I work too hard, but I got to get some things accomplished here. So I appreciate all you guys stopping by. I did want to go through the ESPN FPI real quick. Let's look at this thing real quick, and I'll just throw out where I think it's a bit off. So again, I believe what ESPN's trying to accomplish here is ranking the teams in order, distinguishing the rankings from the schedule factor into the rankings. So they are just saying these are the best teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're not determining that they're going to play that way against the schedule. Case in point again, they've got Auburn ranked 9th with 7.7 wins and Oregon ranked 10th with 9.7 wins. So what they're saying is that they believe that Auburn is the 9th best team in the country and Oregon is the 10th best team in the country, but Auburn's only going to win 8 games and Oregon's going to win 10 games. All right, Clemson number 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3, LSU 4. Now, again, they're not predicting this as the college football playoff foursome. They are saying that Alabama, Georgia, and LSU are 3 of the 4 best teams in the country. Michigan at number 5. Too high. Running back issues, defensive lapses, defensive issues in losing Chase Winovich, Rashawn Gary, Khaleke Hudson, David Long. Oklahoma at 6 seems fair. Notre Dame 7. Florida 8, little too high. Auburn 9, little too high. Oregon 10, maybe slightly high. I really like Texas A&M at 11. But again, at 7.4 wins, their schedule is brutal. Alabama, LSU, Mississippi State, Auburn, Clemson, Florida, South Carolina, and somebody else difficult, Georgia. Penn State at 12, Ohio State at 13. Ohio State is better than the 13th best team in the country. They're better than Penn State. They're decidedly better. I'm not going to say substantially better than Michigan State, but they're decidedly better than Michigan State. Michigan's 14. Okay. The first real joke is Tennessee 15 and Mississippi State 16, especially, of course, the Vols at 15. Tennessee is not the 15th best team in the country. Mississippi State is not the 16th best team in the country. They're slightly worse than that, not substantially. Tennessee is about the 30th to 35th best team in the country. Washington 17, pretty fair. South Carolina 18, too high for them. Missouri 19, a bit too high for them. Case in point again with South Carolina at number 18. ESPN has them going 6-6. So a 6-6 team is obviously not going to be ranked 18th in the country. So ESPN is again making the distinction between these are the best teams, but their record may not match the ranking. This is a bit crazy. UCLA at 20. UCLA last year was roughly the 65th to 70th best team in the country. Yeah, something in that range. They were a bottom 15 team in the Power 5. And then they probably had a good 10 to 12 teams in the group of 5 better than them. Yeah, they were about the 65th best team in the country. They are not going from the 65th best team in the country to the 20th best team in the country. That's not going to happen. Florida State 21, Utah 22. All this seems fair. Iowa 23, Texas 24. Too low. Texas is better than 24. They're 10 to 15, maybe even higher than that. USC at 25, despite the 5-7 season and my lack of confidence in Clay Helton. Yeah, I think that's a smidge high, but not much. Iowa State 26. I'm good with Miami, as I stated before. Based on talent, I think they're a little better than 27, but not considerably. Minnesota 28. That is too high. Baylor 29. That is too high. Washington State at 30 is probably just about right. Nebraska 31. Despite the 4-8 season, I think that's about right, or maybe Nebraska is slightly better than that. Inch them beyond Minnesota. Virginia Tech at 32. I think the Hokies are going to continue to struggle. I know they play a fairly easy schedule, but they're too high at 32. Slightly. They're more in the 40 to 45 range. Stanford at 33. They're way too low. Stanford should be higher. UCF should be slightly higher at 34. TCU at 35. I think they should be bumped up 5 to 8 spots. So those teams that I mentioned were ranked way too high. Tennessee and Mississippi State and some other ones, Minnesota and UCLA. this is where they would be displaced, because Stanford, UCF, and TCU are too low. Arizona State's at 36. That seems a bit slightly too high. Oklahoma State at 37, fair. Wisconsin at 38. I'd knock them up about 8 to 10 spots. Cincinnati at 39 seems fair. Now it tends to get difficult ranking the group of 5 versus the power 5. So our first entry by the group of 5 was UCF at 34. Now Cincinnati at 39. Kentucky at 40. Ole Miss 41, Boise State 42, Virginia 43 is too low, BYU at 44, Texas Tech at 45. And I don't want to overreact to Virginia's 28-0 win over South Carolina in the bowl game to go 8-5. Let's not overreact to Virginia. We tend to do that sometimes. A team that's been awful suddenly is decent. And then we say, wow, they're going to keep going. South Carolina, 9-4 in 2017. They're going to keep going. No, they didn't. Texas Tech at 45. That's a little too high for them. NC State at 46 is fair. Indiana at 47. I guess that's fair. Pitt 48. Syracuse 49. Look at that. Syracuse coming off a 10-3 season down at 49. I think they should be given a little bit more credit than that. Syracuse more in the 40 range. Give them 10 spots. Vandy at 50. Arizona at 51 is a shade too high. Northwestern at 52. Too low. They are undervalued on a regular basis. And here they are again. Northwestern at 52. No. Northwestern was the 15th, 16th, 18th best team in the country at the end of last season. They beat Utah in a bowl game. They beat Minnesota. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Nebraska. They beat all these teams. They only lost to Ohio State in a fairly competitive game. They won 9 games. They're the 30th best team in the country, not the 52nd best team in the country. Memphis 53, North Carolina 54, maybe a shade too high for them. Cal at 55 is fair. Duke at 56, K-State at 57, West Virginia 58. Obviously, the Mountaineers were much better than that last season, but lost all that significant offensive talent. Wake Forest at 59, Arkansas at 60. I have no issues there. Western Michigan at 61, Purdue at 62. Purdue I'd raise slightly. Colorado at 63, I think is a little high. App State 64. BC at 65. I think they should be raised about 10 spots. Louisville 66. They were atrocious last year. They should be a little bit better. 66 seems about right. Army at 67. Of course, let's not look at the record and give too much credit to Army for going 11-2. They played an extremely weak schedule and do again this year. Maryland 68, as we discussed with MCD Sports 4. That's probably a shade too low, but not too bad. And Air Force at 69, Marshall at 70. I'm not going to go beyond that, except maybe point out a few others. Illinois at 79 has been awful forever. Houston's going to take a step back. They're at 80, not be quite as good as they've been in the past. Georgia Tech at 82. Now, this is a team that went 7-5 in the regular season, 5-3 in the ACC. So they were the 45th best team in the country at the end of the regular season, dropping to 82. Utah State loses Matt Wells to Texas Tech. They're at 83. Oregon State at 84 is probably too high. Oregon State was like the 110th best team in the country last year. To raise them 25 spots is probably too much. They had historically an all-time bad defense. And Rutgers seems to be the worst team in the Power 5 at 92. Right, folks, it was great having all of you on here. I want to remind you that some of our offerings here recently include Florida State, Miami, Ohio State live from last night and tonight. We also have full Nebraska position previews: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, secondary. TCU, same deal. Got our schedule rankings. Colorado was the last one to be released at number 14. Who's going to be at number 13? Kentucky position previews. Alabama, Miami, West Virginia is coming out with our schedule preview on West Virginia, and also our look at the West Virginia defense. Had a USC update here recently, just in the past few days. A number of looks at Ohio State, of course, and on and on and on. Here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, thank you so much for jumping on board. If I missed your comment or your suggestion or your question, please leave that in the description section or in the comments section of any of the videos. This is when I know I've gotten a little punch drunk. All right, everyone. You guys have a fantastic Thursday night, Friday morning, and we will see you very soon. And stay in tune with the notifications. I will let you know when we're going to do our next call-in show. Otherwise, next Wednesday night is, of course, our big live stream 3-hour block with Ohio State, Miami, and Florida State. We'll see you soon.